Valuepreneurship is the future of entrepreneurs. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be so rude to say that entrepreneurship has gone, it's finished. Although I'm quite comfortable with saying that because the best of entrepreneurs are valuepreneurs. So here's the thing: entrepreneurs, the thinking of entrepreneurial thinking is like this. I have a product, I have a service. How much can I sell? Who can I sell it to? How much money can I make? Nothing wrong with that. It's pretty cool, and it's brought us up to here. The valuepreneur does exactly the same job, the same work, but the starting point is something very different. For them, the starting point is who's out there. Not what I'm able to do, but who's out there, or what's moving in their world, what's impacting their and shaping what their value priorities are. And having engaged and understood that, then and only then sets about developing responses to service that value.
Welcome to Straight Talk, where we cut through the BS and get straight into real conversations with some of the best minds on the planet, accelerating our awareness of the biggest issues impacting our lives and the future of humanity. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Af Malhotra, your host on Straight Talk. Now, once again, I bring you a phenomenal guest and someone who is dedicated to transforming the way leaders, managers, decision makers evolve, grow, prosper, and harness their skills. Today, I have an individual who is not just a business leader himself, but has dedicated, again, like I said, his life to building frameworks and strategies under the banner of valuepreneurship, which is his term. It's a powerful term. And I came across this term when I spent time with our guest today in a conversation in a pub, which was supposed to be for an hour. And then 3 hours later, we're looking at our watches thinking, wow, we need another 3 hours at least. And valuepreneurship is, I'll ask my guest to describe this, who I'll introduce momentarily, is really all about breakthroughs. And it's about trying to sort of take yourself in this new stratosphere where success, whatever that means to you, achievements, accolades, attainments, they come faster. They come with greater fulfillment. Not saying failure doesn't come your way, not saying, upheavals won't come your way. Your ability to then cope with the tough times, to cope with complexity, to deal with uncertainty, just becomes so much easier and manageable with many of these techniques that my guest today, the great Sanjeev Loomba, has developed and come up with. So Sanjeev, welcome to the show. You are, of course, the author of, and I must put up the book, a very, very compelling, almost a manual. A book is underselling it. I said to Sanjeev when I was going through the book, it's a manual. It's got indexes, it's got chapter after chapter, and it's almost a necessary mandatory purchase for anyone in leadership. The 9th gear. Now, you're going to tell us all about it, but first, welcome to my show. Thank you for giving us time. And how do you feel today? How do you feel being on Straight Talk? And I hope you're excited because we're going to have a conversation.
Well, extremely. And since we had that conversation in the pub, I've really been looking forward to it because I think the angles that you seem to take out, Af, just inspire me and make me feel that, yes, I think I've written the right book. So I've been looking forward to this. I really am.
Thrilled. Okay, we're going to go right into it because there's a lot to discuss. We always start Straight Talk with, the unpacking of your personal story. Who is Sanjeev, and what do we need to know about you so we can better appreciate and understand the why, the purpose behind the book, and of course, everything else you do from here on. So tell us a little bit about you, your background, where did you start your career, your work, your life, and that would be amazing.
Cool. This whole story of valuepreneurship kind of seems to go back to when I was training to be a junior auditor. Many decades ago, and it was then that I realized that I used to end up spending a lot of time with the client, speaking to them about, you could do a new strategy here, you could do a new product there, your people are being underutilized here, and my audit managers used to get very upset with me because they used to say, Sanjeev, here's the blue pen, here's the red pen, tick and bash invoices, that's what we're paid to do, we're not paid. But that taste for just seeing how we are very often seeing the world, seeing business, seeing people the wrong way round because of the me focus, because it's I make it about me. I make it about, what I can get out of it. And then very soon that turns into some sort of a mundane process to which we all become slaves.
Yeah.
And we miss the essence. And the essence is that I am nothing but an instrument of value. That's what my education, my training, my skills, my products, my talents, my experience doesn't belong to me.
Mm.
It happens to be in my bag. It's a gift. And that's not my legacy either. My legacy and whatever, it's the impact that I can make. It's not the assets that I have, but what those assets impact in terms of value. So then I named my company The Real Potential at that time. And I said that this is what I'm going to do in life. I'm going to help people. And the day I qualified as an accountant, literally the day I qualified, I quit. I went on to Cranfield. I did an MBA and all that kind of stuff. But then post Cranfield, there was a temptation and consulting firms and so on, when they read your, what your direction is, they said, Sanjeev, have you thought about this? And McKinsey's thought, have you thought about that? And my thing was this, that I have no right to sit in front of anyone and teach them anything on strategy or leadership or guide them anywhere or coach them in any way if I haven't done it myself.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's when I embarked on a career, which was a corporate career as finance director, marketing director, strategy director, CEO, different companies, different industries, different countries, and different countries as well. But this was by design, because I wanted that breadth of experience. And that was actually, running corporations was my university to do what I do now. Because when I was able to, that's where I honed these ideas around valuepreneurship and really saw that, goodness me, it works. And it was compelling, because I was just exposed in my own mind to see that, guys, we're missing a trick. We're doing this the wrong way around. We're just doing it the wrong way around. We're trying to put product out there. And that's not innovation to me. That's invention. Innovation is coming from the other way around. It's coming from saying, who's out there, what's changing in their world, and what impact can I make? And only then do I design, and also there's integrity in this approach. So that's kind of what I've done. And after that, after running those corporations and things for the last 25, 27 years, I've been then doling this stuff out to companies, to leaders, organizations, globally, literally globally. Companies like Johnson & Johnson or Unilever, whoever, but it's getting them to be able to see it, and those who do, and the leaders who do implement it. I'm humbled to say that the results are something kind of well beyond what they even originally thought. So
right. Wow. So let me just backtrack. So you essentially had this instinct and this almost calling to some degree, maybe realization that your impact has to be significant, and you're more than just the sum of your assets, really, or your accreditations and qualifications, and your ability to influence and change people's way of thinking and life, and then of course culture and so on, was really most important to you. And then of course you went off and did it. And I think that's the one thing I did want you to mention, because it's very important to walk in the shoes of, and when you're mentoring or you're coaching or you're advising, as you do so well in so many large organizations, you have to have that real life experience. And I have to say, this is straight talk, right? As you know, I think the deepest frustrations one has, and you will know this, is when you have individuals, and I won't name who they are, which companies they're part of, but individuals who have academic experience, in the sense that theoretical experience, conceptual experience, and albeit that experience is phenomenal, and when you sit across them, you're impressed because they know so much and they reel off case study after case study. The emotions, however, and this is how it works, whether you take a Navy SEAL who goes on a mission, or a corporate CEO or C-level executive, or a sales guy for that matter, who goes and pitches on the front line, until you're put in a situation, contextually, until you're put right on the front line and you are enacting, you're executing, all of that is just really interesting theory. Because when the emotions go nuts and explode, your amygdala gets hijacked, your limbic system is all over the place or not. And you have to make tough decisions with a lot of uncertainty. That's when you truly realize what works and what doesn't. And one of the things about your book, and I do want to lay this out really clear, is the fact that what you have written here, what you've put together here, which is, I guess, your entire career, like culmination of everything you've learned, your models, your techniques, a lot of your own IP. This is about getting things done. This is about pragmatism. Yeah, we can intellectually debate many things, and we should. This is about actually picking this up and enacting it, right? To using it in a
Absolutely.
job, right?
You nailed it, because I remember it was actually just over a year ago. I was sitting on a beach in Crete, to just literally finishing it off. That's the way I operate. I've got to be in kind of a water surrounded inspirational environment. But there I was, and I got a call from my publisher, and he said that, Sanjeev, man, 550 pages is just too much. It's a big book, and just let's be practical. And then there was he's a very, very good guy, very smart, but he was also thinking commercially. There's no doubt, and he was thinking, let's do volume 1 and volume 2. And then I'll tell you where this links to exactly to what you're saying. And he said that let's split it into 2 volumes. And I said, okay, Andrew, what's your idea? And he said, look, I've been through it, and you've got the whole philosophy and the culture of value and the delivery of valuepreneurship. And the ideology is very, very strong. And then you've got the step-by-step technique and framework and model and how to do it. And he said, there's the split. So let's do volume 1, which is the ideology and the culture and the theory, and then put all the technique into volume 2. And I said, yeah, okay, sure, let me. And then I woke up at 3 a.m. the next day, and I was really feeling uncomfortable. And I called him first thing, and I said, no, Andrew, no. I would be failing, and I would be cheating people if I didn't give them the how and only told them the what, and saved it up. So that is why you're absolutely right that in everything I'm saying, behind every single point, it has to be backed up by real life examples of when, and I'm saying that, look, when I was at Johnson & Johnson, we did this, at Cognizant, we did that, or whatever. So, and then behind it, here is how to make it happen. Even the behavioral stuff, not just the strategic and leadership models and so on. And I think it's important. And you're right that life's experience is what the human, the total human. There's a beautiful word, tajurba, in Urdu, which you know very well. That the total experience of what we go through is what shapes us as people and human beings. And right in the beginning of the book, in my dedication, my foremost dedication is to my father, who's a doctor. And even as a doctor, fine, you can use the right medication and the right processes to make a patient well, and that's very practical stuff. But there are stories of him when he was a doctor in India. He was a surgeon. And there's a story that the blood has run out. He's operating on a patient. Blood has run out. And he was a group O. And blood is going from one arm to the patient, and he's operating with the other. And my dedication in that is to my father, who was the first valuepreneur that I ever knew. So these kind of gigantic moments shaped, I think, and yes, it is a calling. I can't exactly identify where it comes from, but these are the kind of things that really shape me to say that, no, it's not about what we're doing as much as what we are bringing. Yeah. It brings us to a really good point, which is the glossary really for us, and to define what valuepreneurship really is for you. So what is valuepreneurship? Valuepreneurship is the next is the future of entrepreneurs. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be so rude to say that entrepreneurship has gone, it's finished, although I'm quite comfortable with saying that, because the best of entrepreneurs are valuepreneurs. So here's the thing. Entrepreneurs, the thinking of entrepreneurial thinking is like this. I have a product, I have a service. How much can I sell? Who can I sell it to? How much money can I make? Nothing wrong with that. It's pretty cool, and it's brought us up to here. The valuepreneur does exactly the same job, the same work, but the starting point is something very different. For them, the starting point is who's out there. Not what I'm able to do, but who's out there, or what's moving in their world, what's impacting their and shaping what their value priorities are. And having engaged and understood that, then and only then sets about developing responses to service that value. So that's the fundamental difference. And actually yesterday I was in my LinkedIn post where today I think, which is making work meaningful. Someone said recently that work should, this will describe what valuepreneurship is.
Right.
Someone said to me, we should always look for meaningful work.
Yes.
I believe that. I think it's a very important thing, and
yeah.
We are all born with a certain temperament, and that's great.
Yeah.
But before that, let's make work meaningful. This is what we're missing. 70, if not 80% of people on this earth want to be doing something different, something else.
Absolutely.
And there is meaning in everything we do. So he said to me, yeah, well, what about an office cleaner? Well, absolutely. An office cleaner who's going in with the mindset of same old office, same old broom, same old material, what a drudgery, I've got to clean that work, it's mundane. And this will fatigue him or her. It'll definitely bring down the energy, raise the stress. Their productivity will be lower. Their success rate will be lower. There's no question. But a cleaner with the mind of saying, "What am I about?" Okay, there's 100 people working in that office. So I'll use these days there's COVID. So I'll use this gel or that virus cleaner or whatever. So now I'm removing the virus to provide a healthy environment. And then by making it super clean and sanitized and fresh smelling, it'll be a joyful place for people to work. So their productivity will go up. So now from being a cleaner, this person has become a bringer of health and productivity.
Right.
And which one of those two is going to be more productive, more fulfilled? And which of those, for you as the boss of that office, who will you promote? Who will you give a bonus to? Who, you might even say to the second guy or second person that, you want to set up your cleaning business? I'll invest in you. So my argument is this, that valuepreneurship starts from who I'm serving, looking at their value, what's the depth, what's the impact of the changes on their world, on their priorities, and then and only then sets about making his service or her service or product, but then delivers it in such a way that not only are we satisfied as a valuepreneur, much more fulfilled, much more satisfied, our purpose of work is shaped out, a legacy starts to get built up. There's no question about it. Legacy is not what we have, legacy is what we have impacted on others.
Right.
But the other interesting thing is, it actually makes you more prosperous.
And how is that? How is that, Sanjeev? How does it make you more prosperous?
Well, think about this, who would you rather buy from? Would you rather buy from someone who is trying to flog you stuff, win your contract, try and win your business, and you could just feel that selling you stuff, which is 99.9% of business and selling? Or would you rather buy it from someone who is oblivious of themselves, but obsessed with you? And obsessed with not just understand. It's like are you obsessed with the cleaning, or are you obsessed with the health and productivity of the workers? Are you obsessed with the surgery you're doing, or are you obsessed that this patient, if they wait for 1 hour, The blood scenario won't be strong enough to make this operation work. Where is our mind and that? So who will you buy from? It's a simple question. And with whom, the entrepreneur or the valuepreneur, will you argue more and negotiate harder on prices? With the entrepreneur. So if the valuepreneur is going to sell more, and I'm using a selling example, this applies in welfare organizations, it applies in sports, it applies in politics or any sphere of work that we're talking about. If you're going to buy more from the valuepreneur, if you're going to vote more for the valuepreneur, and you're going to argue less on prices with, who's becoming wealthier?
Yeah. Okay. So you know what I'm going to ask you next, which is the reality versus the future we want to create. So let's first start with the more cynical view, in the sense that you are right. There are many more people out there, whatever the percentage is these days, that want a change. They want to do something different. They're not happy with their work. And gone are the days where they have to wake up at 9 in the morning or 8 in the morning and go to work, because a lot of people do it virtually. So you've now suffer virtually, basically. I mean, or the suffering is less because you're in your own safe environment, whatever it may be. Technical view here. Now, these people, let's put their argument forward, because I know you're brilliant at unpacking this. So these people will be like, well, that sounds all very nice, Sanjeev and Af, but in reality, this is what it is. I've got to pay bills. I'm in a job. I don't have a choice. I don't have time to think about being a valuepreneur. It sounds all fantastic. What is my route forward? What is my route forward? I'm stuck. I don't think I'm a valuepreneur. Do I have the potential? Yes. Am I in an environment that doesn't allow me to do that? Yes. Can I just resign tomorrow and get another job? No, I don't have that. What would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah. First thing I'd say to them, and people often say this to me, yeah, Sanjeev, but in the real life. So you use the word reality. When I'm using the example of my father and these are two very diverse examples, or the office cleaner, I'm sure that it's resonating with absolutely everyone. And if anyone listening to this has a sort of contra thought on the cleaner example, it's a real example. It's a down to earth real example. Then talk to me and let's discuss this, because I'm saying this with incredible humbleness and modesty and gratitude, and that is that in the thousands and thousands of people that I've had I've been honored to coach, and the hundreds and hundreds of companies. I'm only saying this because that's my, if you like, the data research. I have yet to come across a scenario, a situation where applying it to their real, today is what happened today in the office, or for it not to apply. I have yet not found it. So first of all, we're talking about real life. The second point you made was about, just remind me, was it about the virtual working or
no? Second point was about the a lack of freedom, or the mindset, which is, look, I have to do this. Sounds great, but in reality, this is, I can't. How am I supposed to practice this?
Right, absolutely. So the cleaner example is right in front of you. Number one. Number two, in the book, the first section is about 110 pages, where it's taken me 110 pages to talk about value. That what is value, and value is not value added. By the way, value added is a bribe, huh? It's a bribe. Value added is a little bit more product or service for no more money. So engage with what value is. It's extremely practical. It's giving you examples. But in whatever you do, and I'll give you another example. It's in the book, actually, but it's worth saying it here, just to make sure that from what you're saying, and I fully understand and sympathize with this, that people will say, yeah, are you sure this is not a lofty idea? Are you sure that I can apply it in my... Absolutely. I was doing a program for some youngsters, very talented youngsters, for a big IT company. I was in Frankfurt, and And I turned to one young lady and I said, Clara, what are you working on? And she said, oh, I'm developing digital applications. And I said, you know, I said, okay, who for? And she said, oh, for our banking clients, And again, I went, so far, it's okay, but it's pretty mundane stuff. Then I asked her a question which flummoxed her. And the question was, Clara, why? This is the word you used earlier on, right? Beautifully. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know what you mean. Why, Sanjeev? I'm working for XYZ, this one of the biggest IT companies in the world. I've been recruited there. I'm working on a project. I'm on a project team. I've got digital application expertise and in the financial sector. And that's what I'm doing. That's okay. I said, guys, it's time for lunch. And it was. So at lunch, I was with her Uber boss.
Right.
A friend of mine, a client, and I said, so he's a senior director in this company, and I said, Klaus, what is Clara working on?
Yeah.
And he said, anyway, if even from him, it wasn't that easy to extract what I was getting at, but I did. Came back from lunch, and I said, Clara, do you know what you're working on? Your client is Absa Bank, one of the biggest South African banks. They found a new market segment, which is poor farmers and small tradespeople in the far-flung villages of South Africa. They don't have credit lines, So to buy his feed and fertilizer, he has to get a sack of money, which he's saved under his pillow, and take a perilous journey for 2 days to Joburg, and then buy his feed and fertilizer, and then come all the way back with another perilous journey. That's 4 days of yield. Your app is solving that. 4 days of yield. It's hitting live. She didn't even know. And this is my argument. This is my point to you, when you said, what if when people say, well, what about my reality? Look, folks, look, even before you start looking for meaningful work, and I'll talk about that in a second. Look for the meaning in your work. We don't even engage with it. We're so wound up with what we are doing that we miss what we are bringing. We don't even know. Even Klaus, I had to drag it out of him.
Yeah.
That evening, they invited me to dinner in Sachsenhausen, and we were all sitting in a nice restaurant, eating our schnitzel and so on.
Yeah.
And all 17 of these youngsters, I mean, they're kind of in their late 20s, early 30s. They all just they didn't want to discuss what Bayern Munich did last night. They all wanted to only talk about what their work is and their impact on the world. It's actually very simple. So I can carry on giving examples after examples. I'm saying to everyone, look in what you're doing and reach out within that and think. If you don't know it, then understand. Speak to your customers, speak to whoever you're saying with, your bosses, your team members, or whoever, and understand the net impact that it's making, and also the impact that it's yet to make or not making. Then, and I'll finish with this part, then by all means, look at your natural temperament. We're all born with a natural temperament. In certain spiritual arenas around Vedanta and so on, we call it swadharma. What is your self duty, in a way, which is your natural temperament that we're born with. Right. We can go into that at another time, but there is a natural driving fire in each and every one of us. And that is worth discovering. And when you do work which is in line with your natural fire, and it's courageous stuff. To be able to. I know a very wonderful young man right now. I won't name him. It'll embarrass him. He might be watching. He qualified to be a doctor, but he didn't qualify. He passed all his exams. He didn't wait around for his 2 years internship and get his certificate practicing. Rather like me with accountancy. The day I qualified, I quit because I knew that wasn't my swadharma. And the guy he's really been stressed out for the last 2 years. because here, his parents have invested in him to do this, and he's had to go through it and all that kind of stuff. But his mind is in business. His mind is somewhere else. His nature is somewhere else. And when we act against our natural temperament, it will grate. It will hurt us, and we won't be that successful. So two things I'm saying, and I'm going to keep quiet. First, look for meaning in your work at the moment and the value impact that it's making. And then, by all means, understand, listen to your natural temperament, and then find areas of work within that.
Brilliant. And I that's a great response. And there's something I took away from that, which is really this concept of self-belief as well is quite important, and self-empowerment. Because when you're going through a stage where that example of someone who's a little bit hopeless and says, well, I can't do much about it, you're reframing the situation and you're saying, yes, you can, and you have to. I mean, and I think this is a very important thing. In life, sometimes you are in situations where they're not of your choice at that moment. Not everything's perfect, designed beautifully. There are times when you've got to do things you don't want to do, or you're not as happy doing them. And in those situations, you still have to continue to move forward. And what I've found, and I'm sure you found this in your work, in your personal life, your professional life, and the coaching you do, you have to sometimes find a way to find the meaning.
Yeah.
You have to, which is what, you're referring to when you talked about that lady. She described what she did, fair enough. But of course, what you help to do is to, go a few levels deeper and figure out the impact of what she does. Because sometimes what happens is when you enact certain things, you do something, like a salesperson goes and has a meeting, a app developer develops an app. Because you're immersed in the work, in the activity of doing that thing, you don't always look up and look around, or frankly, sometimes even have the bandwidth or the energy to think about, because I did this, it did that, and that's the impact it had. So that net impact concept is, for many people, quite distant. It's almost a million miles away, because they're so detached from the net impact of the work. It's like, someone, I don't know, but an example would be someone who works on MRI machines, right? For example, someone somewhere in some factory works on the widgets in an MRI machine. It could be widget 97 out of a billion, I don't know. And that person may or may not be motivated, Sanjeev, at that point. But actually, until and unless someone, and this is where external intervention is important, which is what you do. But I want to raise an important point around managers in a second. So in this case, you talk about how you have helped that person see the light, and they've unpacked it. Maybe they've immersed themselves in a situation. You said, go talk to people who can guide you and help you think differently. I hear that every single time. Now, here's another challenge I want to throw at you, which is when you're a team member, the same team member, you don't have a Sanjeev, right? Okay, we don't have you. Okay, I have my manager. That's as far as it's going to go. If the manager themselves are lost, if the manager themselves believe, oh God, I've just got to do this job, it pays me this much money, right? Crack on with it, will you? To the team, and there's that frustration, which is fine. It's understandable. They're not evil. They do what they need to do. And if the manager's manager is in the same situation, now we are coming to a systemic problem, which is what you would describe as cultural transformation, maybe. Yep. Have you seen that before? And what does one do about that? Because it's a real problem.
Beautiful question. Beautiful. When it's systemic, so I'll tell you a story. In India, I won't name the company, but there's in Pune, like a 3,000-man organization. It's an IT and BPO type of organized business process outsourcing organization, which is dedicated to. They are owned by one of the biggest retail organizations in the world in America. Right. So this American company, retail organization, and this is their IT and BPO arm, which is sitting in Pune. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem in that organization constantly was that between America and between between the actual shop, which is selling cheese or shoes, all the way back to the person who was writing the code in Pune, there were about 12 layers. And there was, and with every layer, the disconnect was getting wider and wider and wider.
Okay. Yeah.
And the person who's writing code has absolutely no clue about the end customer and what the issue is. And when someone goes in to pick up his or her cheese, or exactly the right pair of shoes in the right color in the right size, and it's not there, it comes back to a problem of logistics, which then comes back to a problem of the production, because it wasn't done in the right time, then comes back to a problem, etc. But all the way back through all the layers, through design, through implementation, design, testing, and right down to code writing, the problem goes all the way back. And I was seeing, and there was it really was problematic in that company. They were losing so much business and productivity. It was costing them a lot more. There were delays in absolutely everything. Production were on IT's necks to say, and IT was trying to justify. It was a mess. Simple fix. I mean, and this is not just the whole thing. I'm just giving you one example, but just to show you the dramatic effect it was.
Yeah.
I said, guys, they made videos, short videos, like 2.5 minutes or something, of the end customer and the difficulty that they went through, or the value that they wanted, because why did they come to that shop as opposed to another shop? And then going back to production and to implementation and so on, of the whole chain and how it's impacting the value of the end customer. And no one from that day was allowed to put their fingers on a keyboard and write a line of code until they'd seen these videos. Right. The result was that there was an instant connection. And that connection was encouraged and inculcated as a culture through all the management levels and right down to the programmer. And they just wouldn't even be allowed to put their finger on the keyboard. And suddenly, the conversations, they changed. You know, between the US and India, the kind of warfare that was going on, literally, non-collaborative, communicative warfare, the noise came down. You know, it started to work. It took about 3 months for it all to work. But it's just a simple example and a simple fix. But the point at the end of the day was as simple as this. As a manager, as a leader, my role, my duty is to connect my people, whoever's working the team, with the end outcome and the purpose and the impact that they're making on whoever the end recipient of that value is. That is leadership in a nutshell.
Beautifully put. It's very interesting you say this. I want to take us in another on a parallel path, very similar, which is about leadership effectiveness, right? In these situations where, yes, what you describe seems logical as you describe it, you know, spend time taking through the outcome. In this case, it was videos, whatever technique you end up using. There's an issue around change management here in terms of the person you're dealing with, because of course it takes leadership to make these things happen, right? And then you and I sit in a room, we both believe, actually, you're right. First, we have to accept it's a problem. Okay. Then once we accepted that, we've got to accept that we want to do something about it. You know, it's extraordinary. Some people say, well, it's not such a severe problem, is it really? Because our numbers seem fine. We seem to be doing 20% year on year. I don't see why you have to make a big deal out of this. Okay, you could have that situation as well. One leader says, surely in the long run, this is the best thing to do. And the other one says, no, not really. Don't you have anything else to do, anything better to do? Of course, you know, you're probably bored. So you want to do all of these things. And why do you want to create a mess for yourself? When it comes to culture and change and changing people's minds because they have limited beliefs or fixed ways of doing things, because last 7 years we've been doing it this way. I don't see any problems with what you're saying. You seem to have just created the problem right now. You have these type of skeptics, as you know. I'm sure you've dealt with many of them. This whole area of culture is very, very interesting. Now, tell us. I want to ask you two dimensions of my question. Right. The first one is, maybe some stories around where you've seen the most rigid leaders, you don't have to name them unless you choose to, who have just made up their minds. Maybe you were forced upon them. As in they didn't pay for you to come in. Someone else paid and they're like, great, he's here. What's he going to do now? help us to understand how you deal with these difficult characters, not because they were born difficult, it's just circumstantial. That's my first question. My second question is related to today, and we'll talk about how culture has changed today, like now, and is changing, and how the next generation of leader might behave differently, but we'll come to that in a moment. So firstly, how do you deal with these difficult people who've made up their minds, rigid skeptics, naysayers? Tell us a little bit how you do that.
Beautiful. Before and I'll give you an example or two of such leaders, such individuals, and in the way that you're asking. Let's go back to taking it at, because you were also talking about change, and when change happens, what makes us rigid, and what makes us hold back. What is the problem here? What was the problem with Kodak or with BlackBerry or with Nokia? Because like you're saying, it's very easy to say, hey, these were gigantic brands. They did brilliantly. They were extremely profitable. I mean, do you remember as a youngster, the Kodak, the yellow and the orange, and coming back from holiday and taking your film to Boots and stuff like that? And what a brand, man! Where is it now? Where's BlackBerry? Where's Nokia? Why? Because they were gigantic, but they did not move with the changing natures of the value of whomever they were serving, which is the market in this case. The beauty, and this is where rigidity causes you a problem, because it's not about you. It's never about me. It's never about me. It's always about whom I am serving. That's what valuepreneurship delivers. So the point here is that if the market is changing and I stay rigid, I'm burned, I'm gone, I'm finished. It's a direct correlation. So and yes, you've been very successful. And people say to me, but Sanjeev, so many companies are successful. They're not doing value. They haven't adopted valuepreneurship methodology and strategy and all the leadership and things in their companies. I said, of course they are. Of course they are. There's a market out there. There's a gigantic market out there. So if everyone is doing the same, no one is really differentiated, right? So coming back to this point, rigidity comes from becoming comfortable. There are two reasons why we become rigid. Either we become so comfortable and arrogant to say that I am successful. Right. Success is probably one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you, actually. And the second reason is because of rigidity is some sort of self-protection. That I want to, the only way I can protect myself is to not shift and not move from what, and not, and I don't want to make this political, but we know many political leaders recently who, for not moving, where are they now? We can see that only because they made it about them. And yes, why not? I'll be open enough about this. When someone like when a prime minister who remains only prime minister for 44 days decides to surround herself with a cabinet of people who are not necessarily the biggest movers and shakers, but protect her,
right, and
don't make her look bad, will make you last. So rigidity is a very, very good sign of bringing you down. So the reasons for rigidity is either success and therefore complacency, or fear, and then you come onto it. Now, coming back, and Kodak, they should have seen that the world was wanting to go and take pictures on the mobile phone, so they were going digital, and we didn't do it. BlackBerry, they should have realized that it wasn't all about a physical keyboard, but seeing sport clips on a big screen, which is where iPhone came and destroyed them, and so on. Now, yes, there are so many examples. I would even say that at least a quarter of top leaders that I quote, that I've had the honor of coaching. Yeah. And another thing I want to point out, you said this just now beautifully, that it's not for malintention. There's very rarely is there any malintention. I don't see malintention. All of this, the road to hell was built on good intentions. It's just a human nature that is being expressed over here, that I need to take control. I need to be in control. I need to. So at least a quarter fall into this category. And I remember about a year and a half ago, one person, senior vice president of a major, as it happened again, an IT company, won't name either, was given to me, but full of resistance. That who are you?
Yeah.
I am, and this guy was the god of SAP and etc. It's like technically absolutely spot on and brilliant, but his entire people organization around him, whether it was bosses or team members or colleagues, were just couldn't handle his aggressiveness. And yes, for the first 2-3 sessions, it was tough. The change came the moment he realized, and it doesn't take long, the moment he realized that actually it's he himself that he's damaging by this, because he's shutting down the opportunities. If his team are not going to leverage their talent and their skills and their innovation capability and their creativity, the results that are going to hit in his budget directly. So when he started to realize that, and he said, actually, this is really worth it, because so then he said, yes, Sanjeev, I'm open. And when we connected him and got him to connect his team to the end values of the changing nature of the market and the market segments and their values. It took 6 months, but I'm in touch with him. He's a good friend now. Very, very successful.
Phenomenal. So interesting at that point, we had to be patient. You had to continue with your work. And then, of course, the trigger event was the realization that if I continue on this path, then the end is going to be nearer than I think. And if I want longevity and I want to be, I want to thrive, then I need to make these changes happen. I guess luckily at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we can connect with each other at that level. And some people like data, some people like stories, some people like both, and so on. Let me ask you about, before I jump into the next generation, let me ask you about multiculturalism and the bipolarity of culture. I know you've advised and coached companies in all walks of, in every industry, should I say, and in different parts of the world. And obviously you're bilingual, yourself, and you come from a different background too. Tell me a little bit about, let's take West. I mean, it's a crude term, but let's say West, as in West for me would be Europe, US, UK for now, okay, and everything surrounding it, and East. And East, let's dominate East with a little bit of more of India, and because I know that's your background too. We could have Southeast Asia as well. The Far East, where we've got China, Indonesia, and other countries. Tell me a bit about where you've seen major differences between leaders in these two countries. What does one do well, and what does the other do well, and where do they fall short? So, like, two categories: they do this well, they do this well. They don't do this well, they don't do this well. And because I want to try and figure out what are the main differences in your coaching experience.
Yeah, beautiful. So there is an overall answer, first of all, that I give. There are cultural differences and cultural nuances, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and especially East and West. And no, it's not bilingual, it's trilingual.
Oh, trilingual, of course, yes.
You've forgotten French, but anyway, that's just for fun. No, just to. The reason for saying that is not for me myself, but to say that that level of an understanding of different cultures comes very strongly through language, because language carries with it many references of. So there's one catch-all answer I'll give, that in working across these different cultures, different countries, and diversity, the beautiful thing about diversity is the essential human condition is exactly the same. This is one thing we miss. And in every time an organization has said to me, Sanjeev, can you do us a program on multiculturalism? I hold back a bit. And I ask them, well, what's the problem? What do you mean? Because if they start saying, well, you know what, and this has happened to me many times, so for a French company, we've got a lot of English people coming, so they need to think like French people and behave like French people in this, and vice versa, and so on.
Yeah.
You're going against the grain, against the nature of the cultural reference that person has built up, right from the time that they were born. And the moment you go against the grain of that nature, of that natural culture, you make them uncomfortable. The moment they're uncomfortable, they're pushed further into the me zone and further away from the you zone. So then what happens is that cultural differences start to bite and they become more difficult to manage. So the first thing is that no one was born a Chinese or a Japanese or an American or English or whoever. We became these things. We were born just as human as each other. We were born with exactly the same human emotion and physical makeup. So that's an important starting position. Right. So overall, the best diversity is to be in the same way that within any organization, I work a lot on collaboration. I know I'm going kind of a long way around, but I'll come back straight into your question about diversity. But you can think about diversity like different functions within an organization. And a finance director and a marketing director who are at each other's necks, because the marketing director is, and this is a real story, the marketing director is saying that I need to hire an extra 25 maintenance engineers, and the finance director is saying, no way, it's a regular thing, until you start to pool what is that diverse experience of these people. But the diverse experience of these people can only be pooled over one thing and one thing alone. And that is the end value of the end impact of the end person or people or customer who you and I are even sitting across this table to serve and service.
Right.
And the moment you go into that, then your experience of finance and your experience of marketing, let's call that diversity in this sense, suddenly gets pooled and is working absolutely brilliantly. So, and when we did that, it was actually for electrocardiology medical devices company. But the moment we said, well, stop, guys, 25 more maintenance engineers, what does it represent? Well, et cetera. And it came down to saying that private cardiology clinics in France, for them, it's a huge problem if a machine breaks down, because it's costing money. You've got patients who are lying there waiting for treatment, and by bringing in 25 maintenance engineers, we can bring the repair down from 8 hours to within 2 hours. So that that will generate another X number of customers, which turned into 18 million euros. 18 million euros and 25 salaries pales into insignificance. But it's from that value that suddenly the two were using their diverse experience and expertise and pooling it to service that value. So diversity is to be embraced by bringing people together to serve common value. That is the thing. Now, coming back to then your point between East and West, yes, there are beautiful things in the East, there are beautiful things in the West. In the East, there's no doubt that there's more of an emotional connection. If you're firing someone, for example, unfortunately, in the East, you're not just firing the individual, you're firing the entire family.
Right.
And having that, that's because it's all about honor and what will the family think and what will my in-laws think and feel, and that kind of thing, which is less so in the West. It's more individual. So understanding those kind of nuances is great because it changes your communication patterns. That's what it does. And then in the West, the directness is also very good. In America, the beautiful thing in America is that, look, if there's value, people put the dollar in front.
Right.
In Europe, they'll procrastinate. In India, they'll negotiate. in China, they'll positively put you down. So these things go on. But I've seen that bringing together multicultural teams and working with them, it all starts to melt into insignificance when you start building that common goal value of the end value you're bringing. Then look at the different ways that an Indian or an American can collaborate and use their own cultural references to within that.
Yeah.
It becomes absolutely beautiful. So diversity is, I think, super powerful.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, that's a great example. I find it's amusing because when you look at, in the past we've done shows, we look at things related to patterns and nuances in different environments, right? So culture is a good one. Nations and how nations and the origins of culture in those nations have an impact on work life. And then you've got to look at personal life and structures and, values and ideals and habits and all of these other things are super important. I think one of the most important takeaways of what you're saying, and it's important to reflect on this. And as people are listening to the show, you have to sort of pause for a little bit and digest what you're saying. But I think in effect, what you're saying is if you can create a connection between one side and the other side, and you have to work really hard sometimes to do that, don't just give up. So you have to create a connection between what you do and what the impact it's creating, the value, as you call it, it's creating. It's almost like the example I would give is watching something being built from scratch, and then it goes into like a movie and it goes into black and white. And then over time, you see the colors change and it goes into HD and then finally moves into 4K and then 8K and whatever the other formats are. And as you enrich that picture and as it gets clearer and more complete and vivid colors and you feel like you're there, firstly, you have to accept that it's not an instant realization. It might be for some, but actually for most, it's not instant. It's not bang, totally get it. It takes a little bit of time. Okay. It also takes support. It takes conversation. It takes dialogue. It takes reflection. And you will have to make some clear, decisions as to, okay, in order for me to feel more satisfied in the work that I do and feel like I'm making an impact and get myself in the right state of mind, because if I'm in this state of mind, I'll do way better, right? To get into that state of mind, I will need to figure out when I code what my code is really doing on the front line. At the end of the day, why is it important I code? And if I stop coding, as in I don't write this code, what are the impacts and what are the ramifications of me not doing this piece of work? It's really hard though, right, Sanjeev, because without being judgmental, because sometimes when the work is repetitive, which is where a conversation around AI needs to come in momentarily, because AI will replace all repetitive work sooner or later, and it's already starting to do that. But when work is repetitive, it does get boring. You do it and you keep, almost people can close their eyes and do the same thing again and again. In a factory, for example, it's a great example, right? Move one product to the other on the conveyor belt system. Now we have robotics, but that's been part of it. I guess there's another element. So one is connecting meaning with what you're doing in terms of the outcome. The other also is, I would ask you to comment on this, which is the life outside of work. And I want to give you an example. I was sitting with the CEO of a company, it's a listed company, and we started chatting and we had a bottle of wine and stuff, and it became more real, the conversation. And he said something really profound to me. And I'm throwing this at you because it's very important to understand personal life, because work life is a direct result of your personal life. I would say, I don't think you're devoid of personal life. So he said something interesting to me. And we were talking about leadership and empathy and compassion and all these, good things, and compassion and passion and inspiration. And he said, after a few drinks, he said, Af, what makes you think, I hear what you're saying. He said, but what makes you think I can just turn it on and off? What makes you think I should come into work as a leader and suddenly be passionate and suddenly be compassionate, suddenly be empathetic or whatever it may be? I said, so what do you mean? He said, because there's one important thing. How do you know that in my personal life, I have any of those things? How do you know that I am I see and experience compassion in my personal life. I see inspiration. I am motivated. I see empathy. How do you know that I don't have any of those? My personal life could be a shit show, right? How do you expect me to come into work and just press a button as I walk through the front door in the office, and because of my title, I suddenly need to be empathetic and compassionate and passionate and so on and so forth? And I said, fair enough. And I said, well, you're right. You're actually right. You bang on, because we jump to conclusions because we think a C-level executive or some leader in some important position should kind of have this on tap, right? Like it's all happening. Like you just get to work, you're super passionate all the time. And then he said, and the other thing he said to me is, he said, remember, it's about phases. There was a time when I was crushing it and I was the best at my work. And there is a time when I'm not crushing it because things have happened in my personal life. So why I'm saying this is I'd like you to touch on, I know you do, the importance of life, your personal life, and living well generally. Work is important, but it's not the only consideration. You have to look at it in a multidimensional way. So walk me through some examples of where you think things on a personal end have fallen apart and maybe had a negative impact on work. And how do you sort of come out of it? What's your opinion on it?
You know, the beauty of your comments and your thought, your thinking pattern and your direction of thought, it makes me think that, my gosh, okay, should we take another 3 hours on this?
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, but one or two things I do want to ask you.
No, and I'm delighted because they are very, very linked. But you just made about 4 or 5 points, and let me start in almost in reverse, because that's the hottest.
Yeah.
People talk about work life and work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. And yes, of course, there should be. It's balancing your recreate. We are multifaceted. We have recreation, we have love, we have emotion, we have operations, we have to deliver, we have to generate money. So these are different facets of our life. In the same way that in on a weekend you wake up and you do some exercise and you practice your music, and then you meet with some friends and then you cook some food. These are different dimensions. So why do we make such a do we distinguish work and life? And that unfortunately puts a false notion that work is a necessity for life. And this is where we go wrong, because we start making a distinction, and almost before we know it, subconsciously we've concluded that work is bad, life is good, and start feeling bad about Monday mornings and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, that balance is, work is a part of life. This is very, very important. It's all encompassing. Next point, that the point you mentioned about the CEO, the senior leader, who said to you that how can I just turn it on? That compassion, I can do it at home. Isn't that showing the selfish nature of the human being, that it's all about me, that I can turn it on because my family, my children belong to me, my friends belong to me, whereas my workers are something else? No. Yes, and I'm not saying that your emotional connection with your workers is exactly the same as with your children. Why should it be? But we started this conversation, if you remember, by saying I am nothing but an instrument of value. That is all I am. I'm not even my education. I'm not my skills. I'm not my product. I'm not my services. I'm not my education. I'm not a CEO. I am a bringer and an instrument of value. In that sense, the moment you start seeing yourself as an instrument of value, that degree of care that you have for people, for your friends, for your family, why should it be any different? Yes, emotionally it's different, but from a delivery point, why is it any different to people's whose life you've been an employee? You might already be an employee. What kind of bosses do you want? Those bosses who are thinking about you and about your value, your career, your growth. How is that different to when you're thinking about your son's expectations of you, right? So, or your daughter's expectations of you. So we must stop making this distinction. And the moment that we stop making it about, because it's when we can take ownership, me, mine, my family, then I'm okay. And I don't. If you have the same dimension, and people say that, yes, Sanjeev, but your family is your family, and when you're at work, you might not like your boss, you might not like people. Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to like someone to impact their value. Do you know why? If you are making a decision that I'll impact this person's value because I like them, but not this person's value because I don't like them, and I have to turn it on with this, but I don't have to turn it on with this person, who are you hurting the most? That person or yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Because effectively what I'm saying, if I'm making those kind of judgments, I'm going kind of, the beauty of speaking to you is that I'm kind of giving myself the comfort of being able to speak at a reasonably elevated level. But elevated is transactional. Transactional is elevated. There's no distinction between what is, we can even say, spiritual and transactional. But the thing here is this: that if I have a skill, if I have a talent, let's say I'm a teacher, or I teach strategy and leadership and so on, and I start making decisions, and I'm teaching every week, and I'm next week, okay, I'm in Dubai, okay. If I find that out of a group of 12 people, one of them is not so cool and a bit obstructive, and I decide I'm not going to teach them that well, who am I hurting more? I am not plying my gift because it doesn't belong to me. Nothing belongs to me. My gift is not mine. Right. So I'm not applying that to bring any value. So here's the point. My choice of whom I serve and how I serve it, and this is where you don't have to turn on and off anything. If you build a constant notion that I am but a bringer of value, and that my skill, my knowledge only exists to impact someone's value, is that you don't have to like the person. You don't have to care for the person. You say, I care for my child, but I don't care for my team member. You don't have to care for them. What you have to care for is the way that you are using your skills to impact their value. So you care for their value, not necessarily for the person. And the moment you do that, you are absolved of this. And you've moved out of the me and mine, and you're working working in a sphere of, I am impacting someone's value. This is the only, when we do disappear from the face of this earth, I'm going to get a bit cliched over here. Nothing is going to go with you, to use the cliche, to even say that this house belongs to me is wrong.
Right.
Does this house even know I exist? So the question is this: your assets, your capabilities, your talent, nothing is going to go forward. Yes, there is only one thing that you could call your legacy, and that is that during that lifetime, how was I able, how much depth of impact did my skills, my talents, my products, my services, my capabilities actually make? That can never be taken away from you. That's in your balance sheet that moves on. So if think of ourselves, this might sound lofty and grand to some people listening, saying, Sanjeev, now you've gone into, guys, I want to say this loud and clear, that this is the kind of principle and thinking. It's in the book, but we are bringing it into your day-to-day transactions. Any simple transaction. Someone who comes and asks you, the boss, I wanted a week off next week. How are you interacting with that person? How are you, whereas if your son says, your daughter says that, Dad, my iPad is broken down, you approach it differently. Yeah. Why? Because you know that you want your son or daughter to pass their exams, but you don't want this guy to succeed in your organization. So I can go on. Now, last point, to go back to where you started your discussion. I hope that kind of covers.
Yeah, no, it did. It makes a lot of sense.
To go back to something that someone said to me about this thing about mundane and boring, that work can become mundane and boring. Does it apply to does what I'm saying? Well, absolutely. Someone said to me, I was in Portugal a few weeks ago doing a program. Someone said to this strategic direction and people leadership or whatever 5-day program. Someone said to me, hey, Sanjeev, how many times have you done this program? at lunchtime. And I said, oh, this is my first. And they said, what? You mean we're like your guinea pigs here? I mean, hey, you know? And I said, no, if you say it like that, I've done it hundreds of times. So he said, well, why did you say you're doing it for the first time? And I said, it's because it's the first time I'm doing it for you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it new for me.
Yeah.
And I never consider it boring, because it's not what I'm doing, it's what I'm impacting. It's your value.
Yeah.
Last week, it was someone else's value.
Yeah.
And so you and that person are different. So when you're making a piece of widget in a factory, that widget today is going to deliver some other mechanical solution as opposed to the widget you made last week. When your mind is there, it all work suddenly becomes, it's not about what you do, it's what you bring. And the final point is, then they ask me that what is one single problem that you see in the world today? Is there one? And much to their surprise, I said, yes, there is, because they thought I'll say, oh, there are many issues in the world. And they said, is there one single problem? You're going around the world, you're meeting different people, different organizations, different levels. Is there one single? I said, yes, there is. And he said, what? And I said, it's disunity.
Mm-hmm.
And in diversity and the work that you are doing in DEI and Diversity Economics Institute, I read the kind of stuff that you're working on. It is exactly where we need to be, because disunity is causing, I mean, whether it's at the political level or country level or within an organization like the finance director and the marketing director, everyone is at each other's throats. Why? Because we're making it about me. It's too much about me. And that is taking me away from the value impact that I'm able to make, because it's more about what I can get and what I'm doing, rather than what I'm impacting, what I'm bringing. The day that we start doing that,
you're spot on. And I think there's so much to reflect on and so much to think around in terms of valuepreneurship and how can I be a valuepreneur? How can one be a valuepreneur? And of course, you've got to go on a journey, and that's why the book is important. Very quickly, why is it called the ninth gear?
Okay. So I said to you, valuepreneurs fly way, way, way above entrepreneurs or anyone. But the thinking is this is nothing to do. If I said to you, who are the best drivers in the world, technically speaking? You'd say F1, right? Yeah,
of course.
F1, right? They're the best drivers in the world. How many gears does an F1 driver have in his car or her car?
Don't tell me.
8.
Okay.
And so when you are the best of the best, moving to that's the you factor that gets you distinguished. You're not competing with anyone.
Beautiful.
And your ninth gear resides inside you, in your valuepreneurial culture, your behavior in life.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, that is absolutely fantastic. And before we close off, I just wanted to ask you one more question around, of course, the book. I want people to buy the book, and where can they buy the book from?
It's
Amazon?
And Amazon, of course. It's listed on Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, and so on. But we're in the world of, so it's. I think you are holding So there's the hardback. There's the Kindle. I'm going to say something very strange. The hardback and the Kindle are almost the same price. I would strongly recommend going for the paperback. Strongly recommend. And there's a reason for that. And that is that not only have I written it with a lot of love, but I've worked also with my publisher to visually make it more engaging and easy and interesting to read. So unfortunately in Kindle that all gets destroyed. So
that's the tough part, because of course you've got, just for everyone's benefit, there are lots of models in here, a lot of techniques and models and frameworks and so on, and I guess you have to pick up the books to be able to use them. Again, I must say, this for me is a manual. It's like a playbook, and it's like a reference book to some extent, where you're looking at sections. You're like, okay, I need to figure out pricing. I need to look at strategy. I need to look at mindset. I need to look at stress. I need to look at production. I need to look at procurement, and it goes on. And it really is almost like a if you were a lecturer, I'm sure you've done lecturing in universities. This is almost like your teaching manual, right? To a large extent, someone stole it and turned it into a book, and you did it yourself. So this is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I wanted to just thank you for the discussion today, the time we've had together, and yeah, this is the power of conversation is that one topic leads to another, one theme leads to another, and then you go, you're on the highway, you come off the alleyways, and you go deeper into the gullies, and you discover more things, and then you want to discuss them, and you come all the way back to your point. It's, I took away that connection from one to the other as being quite significant in the work you do, especially in valuepreneurship. So I'm grateful for your time and your energy, Sanjeev. Before we close off, of course, I just wanted to get a quick sanity check on how the experience has been for you today. How has this conversation been for you? Of course, you discuss this all day long. This is your bread and butter, but I'd love your input and a little bit of feedback.
I found it a little difficult to write the book. When I say little difficult to write the book, every time I sat down to write, I was thinking, who am I saying this to?
Right.
And that, because naturally, but you give me someone live who's got real thinking and thought, or business and issues and so on. That's when I come into my own, because that it's all about solving it for people, rather than. So for me, for that reason, this last hour and a half has been so inspirational and uplifting, because the way that you are thinking and asking the connections and the questions and making those connections is electric, and that's what made it a joy for me. And so thank you for raising such sharp points and getting me to learn myself about what I'm saying, and to explore further into the depths of whether it's work and life or whatever it is. I mean, a lot of this stuff I'm just making it up on the hoof, but that's thanks to you and your questions. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the feedback. We'll absolutely have you on the show either when you write your next book, or when there is something bugging you and you need a platform to discuss it, because that's what Straight Talk is all about. Where can people find you? Have you got a website, or have you got LinkedIn? Tell us where we can find you.
So LinkedIn, yes, Sanjeev Loomba. If you search me on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. The website is simply valuepreneurship.com.
Okay.
And it's got all my sort of details into my people and my team in there as well. So yeah, you can be in touch.
Superb. Yeah, I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm just flipping the pages. They're like numerous sections that I just feel like when I'm finished with the call, I'll open the page up, and there's section 1.24, page 115. Whose value onions? I don't know what the hell that's about, but I'm going to read it. And it's got a story: luggage to and from India. I mean, this is magical. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. Real pleasure. We'll look forward to seeing you on the show again at some point. Be well, take care. For my listeners out there, click on the bottom right. You'll see the subscribe button. Please click. There's a bell. Get the notifications and join this revolution that we're on. It's totally free, not for profit. I want to have 1 million people watching this, accelerating their knowledge, their awareness, so they're in a better place tomorrow. So over and out. I'm Afmal Hotra. This is Straight Talk. Thank you.